Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see then what is making the headlines with the political editors of the Daily Mirror and The Sun, Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. Welcome to both of you. As ever, though, let's take a full look, first of all, at the front pages, starting with the Financial Times, which reports that the Prime Minister is facing cabinet deadlock over whether to bring in any tighter COVID restrictions in time for Christmas. The Eye reports that ministers demanded more data on the impact of the Omicron variant during today's emergency cabinet meeting. They understand stats about its severity will be available before Christmas and will be used to help the Prime Minister decide on restrictions. Same story for the Daily Telegraph, their headline, Confusion at Christmas. The Guardian says that even though COVID is surging, the cabinet split means there will be no new curbs, at least for now. The Times says the delay in making any decision is good news for hopes of a normal Christmas. In the meantime, as The Sun puts it, hold on to your baubles. The Daily Mirror leads with news that the Queen will spend Christmas at Windsor instead of Sandringham. Dominic Raab's remarked that the people photographed meeting in Boris Johnson's garden last year weren't partying because they were wearing suits, is the lead for the Metro, with the headline, Raab's tailor-made excuse. So, plenty to talk about. Pippa and Harry are here. Well, Harry, let's start with your paper, The Sun. Hold on to your baubles. The PM warning of new COVID curbs at any moment. What's happening? Is it a case of case not proven, or is it paralysis, which is what the Shadow Health Secretary said?
Yeah, I mean, there was a sort of a drumbeat of every health figure you could possibly imagine leaping to the airwaves all weekend, saying now is the time, we must do something quickly, and that old playbook sort of crashing into political reality this morning. Now, you could call it paralysis and a divided cabinet if you believe that the Prime Minister is on the side of the people who want to go further with the restrictions. But I suspect that he's probably not one of those people. I think politically, I'm not sure he could survive being the person that locks down Christmas at short notice 2 years in a row, and whether the public would even listen on a wide scale to any attempt to hamper with this Christmas after the pain of the last year and the disaster that was last winter. So the cabinet obviously met today for 2 hours. The Prime Minister let everyone around the table vent some spleen finally. He's been quite badly stung by his close ally, Lord Frost, resigning, who cited COVID very highly on the list of reasons that he was out the door. So I think he wanted to let off some steam, let some pressure out, and frankly, let perhaps some of his ministers do his hard work, which was resisting this wave of noise from the health lobby to move to immediate restrictions. Now, that said, I think the writing is pretty clear on the wall tonight that while Christmas might be fine, I wouldn't be making any New Year's Eve plans tonight. We talked about this time last week, that eventually there will probably be, with the soaring Omicron cases, a time ahead of its peak that is expected in January to perhaps have some return to semi-restrictions like the rule of six, or perhaps outdoor hospitality. But it does feel tonight there's been a concerted effort by both the Prime Minister and some of his more sort of freedom-loving cabinet ministers to kick this the other side of the weekend.
Yes, I mean, we get it, I think. He doesn't want to be Grinch again, does he? And who would, in many respects? But let's take a look at that political reality you talked about there, Pippa. 100 MPs we know voted against Plan B. Has Pippa frozen? Hold on a second. I think she might have done. Okay. Harry, we were going to try and reset your sound. You're slightly on the edge of Dalek, but we're going to have to persist with you. I'm sorry, we'll have to... we'll do you one at a time.
This is the problem with suddenly working from home full time. We're back to you're on mute and 2020 tech problems. No, but the Prime Minister was stung, as well as the resignation of Lord Frost, by a 100-strong rebellion last week. So there's no appetite within the Conservative Party for further restrictions this side of Christmas. And the problem is that you've got the Labour Party who are saying, well, we need to do something now. And it's a very easy attack for the opposition to make, which is, well, actually, the Prime Minister is putting his party interests before before the national interest. So it's going to be a bit of a vicious fight in the coming days about that.
Yes, I think, Pippa, we've got you back. We were just saying that the political reality for the Prime Minister is the 100 MPs who voted against Plan B, the Lord Frost resignation, even, to be fair, perhaps possibly cabinet members around the room who are beginning to think about a leadership challenge and wondering who might support them, whichever way they go. So my question is, will there ever be, given that, a time when the Prime Minister can bring in the sort of restrictions that some scientists want him to?
Well, his standing is certainly faltering within the Conservative Party, and not least, as you say, having lost Lord Frost, one of his closest and most supportive cabinet ministers, ostensibly over the COVID restrictions, but also I think Brexit may have played a part. But we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that later, I'm sure. I think the reality is that without that data, which explicitly makes clear the link between hospitalizations and high case numbers for Omicron, he's going to struggle to get it through with the support of his party. He could obviously rely on Labour, but that's politically very difficult for him. And the problem is, of course, from a scientist's perspective, that it's already too late. That the data, you need to sort of go before the data really shows how severe it may be. So it's certainly problematic for him. But I think he's kind of hamstrung, actually. I don't think he's going to be able to do it, and that's part of what today's decision to delay making a decision was about. That he's not in a position politically where he could push through any more restrictions. Not least with certainly at least without exploding, his own party. And I don't think that, well, quite clearly, he doesn't want to do that when he's already in such a fragile position.
And many of the newspapers are leading on this difficulty of making the decision, the fragile position you're talking about, right from the Telegraph, talking about confusion, right through to the Financial Times. Johnson faces a cabinet deadlock on COVID curbs before Christmas. The Guardian too, COVID surges, but cabinet split means no extra curbs for now. So this is the great difficulty, isn't it, Harry, about the decision making. We've got you back, hopefully without the garlic element of it, although, we could still hear you. Dalek, not garlic. Dalek, yes. No, just saying about the ability to make a decision is very difficult. And in the meantime, Her Majesty the Queen in Pippa's paper has. She's made the decision for whatever reason, but certainly she takes a sense of what feels right for the nation.
Yes, and again, without being too conspiratorial, I will take the Buckingham Palace statement at their word on that one. But the idea of moving the entire royal household at a time of heightened COVID restrictions, given how carefully they bubbled last year, it seems a little bit more sensible to stay at Windsor, a little bit more straightforward. Look, the advice from the government tonight, and I pushed them on this. Everyone I spoke to, from Downing Street to cabinet ministers, is: are you telling people to change their Christmas plans? And they're very much saying, no, do not. But you can understand why there's a lingering sense of fear tonight, given that that's exactly what they said last year. And then, on the right at the last minute, when most people were already cooking their Christmas puddings or were already on trains or driving across the country, they said, "Oh, well, actually, no, don't, no, actually, there is no Christmas. You've got to go back. You've got to lock down again." So there's a real sense of lack of trust, I think, in what the government is saying, which wasn't really helped today, I don't think, by this sort of void of a few hours that it all sort of disappeared into a sort of interscene Tory civil war, rather than actually, it just felt like there was an argument amongst themselves rather than an argument about actually what is best for the country.
Yes, let's just see the Mirror then. Queen's quiet Christmas. Her Majesty cancels plans amid national confusion. That word confusion back again. As I said, most of the other newspapers, The Guardian, The Eye, The Telegraph and so on, talking about the cabinet split, COVID surges, no extra curbs issue. And many of those MPs who had voted against Plan B said they want more data. And I guess this was the message from Cabinet too, about hospitalisations, about who is being admitted. I think Pippa might have frozen again. This is very interesting, isn't it? She's still there, are you? She can still hear us.
I'm
Yes, you still.
I'm
That's great.
still here if you can hear me.
And the data that they want is about how long people stay in hospital and who's going in and why. But do you think actually, given the rate of infection amongst health service staff and other emergency staff, that's really the wrong question? And really, it's about staff losses to COVID, which will become the most pertinent question, most pressingly.
It's certainly both elements of it, isn't it?
Pippa, you go.
It's both elements, and I think the reality is, for particularly in hospitals where we are tonight in London, which are seeing large numbers of staff stuck at home with coronavirus, not necessarily badly, but nevertheless off for 10 days. Key workers that are needed to support the NHS more broadly, let alone those rising cases of COVID patients who are ending up on the wards. It's a huge problem facing the NHS, and that's something that certainly that has been flagged by health leaders. Consistently over the last few days, they've said that the government needs to make a decision sooner rather than later, and yet we still are here in this state of limbo. So it's a problem for the NHS, it's a problem for people. And, there's been lots of Conservative backbenchers from right across the party, different wings of it, saying today that the one thing that they want more than anything is certainty, because it isn't just about whether you can spend your Christmas with your granny or, your friends from down the road. It's about what happens after that. And there are people with weddings planned, with, my email inbox, I'm sure Harry's the same, has been full of people emailing me saying, I'm supposed to be going on holiday on the 27th. Can I go? I'm supposed to be getting a flight. I'm getting married. I've delayed it 3 times already. Is that going to be able to go ahead? I've got this big New Year's bash planned. All this uncertainty about some quite, sort of major events in people's lives, and they want to know whether it's going to go ahead. And the combination of both the health experts and the public asking for more answers, and those answers just haven't been forthcoming. Boris Johnson's making it clear, yes, Christmas looks like it's going to go ahead, but he says he's going to reserve the possibility of changes. And as Harry rightly says, that happened very suddenly last year. You compare that with Nicola Sturgeon, who there's no actual difference in position on the ground in terms of whether Christmas can go ahead or not. She just, however, made it clear that there's no intention of last-minute changes. And I think that just that extra little bit of clarity gives people sort of maybe faith that they can go ahead with their plans at least until Boxing Day, and then of course we're going to have to wait and see what happens after that.
Yeah, Pippa Crerar, a social calendar agony aunt. Sounds like you've got a post bag full of it. But just in terms of the cost, without this strong messaging, the public behaviours have already changed. The Telegraph pointing out that the pubs and restaurants' Christmas bill will be enormously high, like 1.5 billion. That's rent due on Christmas Eve, and yet their income is obviously falling away.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Something that Whitty said to the cabinet, not on this call actually today, but on Saturday, a colleague of mine picked up this particular gem, that he said that actually they've been pleasantly surprised by the number of people who just changed their behaviour overnight when the scientists and Boris Johnson turned up on the TV last week and basically scared everyone into cancelling Christmas parties and not really going out. Now, from the health lobby's point of view, that is a win. Whitty was very pleased with that. It actually, if anything, has bought perhaps the Prime Minister a bit of time before being able to have to introduce restrictions, because people have already altered their behaviour. I know I have already. I've started to work from home when I can, and probably gone out less than I have done over previous Christmases. But on the flip side of that, you've got the economic impact of it, and the problem is you've got pubs and hospitality and restaurants, the busiest time of year, being left high and dry. Now, the Chancellor jetted back from California in his very unfortunately timed trip to Silicon Valley last week, and there is something cooking, there is something coming for hospitality, and it's going to be very needed, not necessarily this week, but as you say, when rent starts to bite, and in those quieter weeks of January and February and March, traditionally times when people don't go out less, that's when this pain is really going to bite. The lack of funds from Christmas will really come home to roost.
OK. And I just worked out, it's not people working from home at this time of night, it's that last-minute Christmas shopping online, that the bandwidth, or whatever we call it these days, is just gone at the moment, isn't it? So a picture that you did not put out, Pippa, was The Guardian originally. It's still in the front page of the Metro as well tonight too. Raab's tailor-made excuse. We'll get on to what he said earlier, but who has a view like that? Who possibly leaked this, do you think?
Well, there's quite interesting floor plans being sort of doing the rounds of Twitter and WhatsApp groups of number 10 over the last couple of days, and they seem to identify that it's taken from the first floor of what effectively is number 11, used by the Chancellor's team. However, they've been very quick to point out that, of course, last summer this area was cordoned off for basically in order to make the building more COVID compliant and more social distancing. It was a workspace that was used for people right across the building. So, despite the fact that people like Ed Balls, who of course will know the view from that window very well, were mischievously tweeting that he recognised the view. I think that they're distancing themselves from it.
We've only got 10 seconds left. Question for you very quickly then, Harry. Have these photos been damaging for the Prime Minister, yes or no?
Absolutely. And I think if it's a political enemy that's trying to get them out there, that's astonishing and really brutal. But
Harry?
if it's a civil service mole, then, then